Howdy. It's a beautiful afternoon. I'm outside on the porch. And today, for urban geography, I'd like to take a look at the problems that cities face. So, today, yes, again, I hear you groaning, kids. We'll do another one of these annotated PowerPoints, or we'll talk about it narrated. And then but also tomorrow in class, then, the classroom for assignment, I want you to go ahead and read some articles to apply this. So, there will be an assessment tomorrow. There'll be some articles that fit into what we're talking about today. But we'll take a quick look at some of the basic city problems and what causes them. Okay, so let's take a quick look. First off, you have to consider that there are things that affect the city. You have centralizing forces, forces that pull people back into the city, make people want to live in the city, do things in the city, go in the city, and especially the heart of the city, the downtown area. I've got here entertainment, sports, and jobs, but those are things that really make people go downtown. I mean, obviously, jobs like in Omaha, we've got First National, Union Pacific downtown, and other things like that. That gets people downtown if there's going to be aspects of that. Usually, that's where your skyscrapers are in every big city. But there's other things like sports. City after city has put stadiums downtown. Why? To get people back downtown to like the College World Series in Omaha. But then also they'll hit all the restaurants and the stuff around there, and they'll walk around. Entertainment. I mean, we have the old market. The old market downtown Omaha. It's a great place to go walk around and see all the stuff. But think of like the CHI Center down there. That's where you have all your big concerts, when and if we ever have concerts again, are all downtown. Those are things that pull people want to go downtown and makes life down there desirable and fun. And then people start also moving back downtown. In downtown Omaha, we have a lot of growth down there. There's a lot of condominiums. People live down there. Why would you want to live all the way out in the suburbs? If you're a young person with no kids, you probably want to be downtown. Centralizing forces, things that bring people back into a city. Decentralizing, things that drive you out, make you want to live outside of the city, out in the suburbs, do less. I'm not going into the city because of blank blank. Things like crime, overcrowding, high rents, pollution, hard to travel, no parking, just the inner parts of your city get run down and people want to move out. Hey, that happened in Omaha. We had the 60s, 70s, and 80s, downtown Omaha starts changing and everything starts moving out west, and downtown itself starts having problems. But today, what we're going to talk about Friday is gentrification, commercialization, where you get people to move back down, you redevelop downtown. But these decentralizing forces are what drive the suburbs, urban sprawl, and the moving out to places like Bennington. Major problems, pollution. It's been real interesting. Have you seen those pictures because of the COVID, self-home quarantines and stuff, where they had pictures of major cities like Los Angeles and stuff, where you can actually see how polluted it was, and now you can see the clear sky and stuff because people aren't driving. It's crazy, but pollution can be important. Sanitation, trash around the place. Are there drugs? I mean, are there rats running around and stuff? Drugs and crime. That can be a big thing. When things start running down, you start having problems, and crime could go up. And crime then, as it goes up, pushes more and more people out. It becomes a major decentralizing factor. Noise, congestion, people just everywhere. Substandard housing. I mean, slums, areas that are run down, abandoned. We're going to show you Detroit later on. Transportation. Hey, cities like Los Angeles, man, it's tough to drive there. My brother lives down in Fort Worth, and when we go down to Dallas, Fort Worth, drive around Dallas, Fort Worth in the rush hour, give me a break. A bigger city, the bigger transportation headaches. That's why you have to have mass transportation, which we really don't in Omaha. But these are some of the most common problems around the world and in America. So let's look even more so. All too often with urban sprawl, all too often what happens is that people start moving out to the suburbs. They leave the city, and as they leave the city, they move out. Your downtown and the areas around the downtown start to shrink. People don't want to go down there. Businesses move out, and before you know it, the services move out, the tax dollars move out to the suburbs, and some cities don't. Like Omaha, we annexed all the way out to Elkhorn, but the city of St. Louis, their city limits stops. And then around St. Louis, you've got all these other suburbs. I lived in St. Louis for 2 years, but I didn't live in St. Louis. I lived out in Maplewood. You live around the city, Richmond Heights, Clayton, all those things around on the Illinois side, Collinswood and stuff. So basically, people move out. And what happens as the jobs and businesses move out, it makes it harder for the people that live there to get the jobs and stuff like that, and neighborhoods start to drop. And with this loss of tax base and other stuff, things get run down really quick. If you look at the picture here, look at those houses. The windows all busted out. One window's got a sheet across it. Well, nobody wants to live in that neighborhood, and it's hard to get people to want to buy property in that neighborhood, so it makes it hard. And what you get then is urban decay. Cities start to break down. And if you don't do something about this as a city, you got a problem. It's like the middle part of a tree. When that rots out, eventually that tree's going to collapse. And cities know that. It's called, a lot of it is called blight and flight. Blight is when things just get run down. Flight is when people start moving out to the suburbs. It's also called white flight because in a lot of cities like Detroit and stuff, or St. Louis, a lot of that flight out to the suburbs was caused in the 60s, 70s, and 80s after some riots and stuff. Now, take a look at Detroit here. I've got two pictures on here from Detroit, Michigan, okay? At one time, Detroit had 33,000 abandoned houses, because that's basically Omaha, okay? And if you look at the pictures here, you can see what I'm talking about. Now, they don't today because Detroit's had a policy of if we've got abandoned houses and it's ruining neighborhoods, we're going to go ahead and demolish them, and so we can do something with the land. But what do you do when you've got no neighborhoods or no houses in the neighborhood? Look at the picture on the left. You got two houses on this block. A block away, you've got one house there. You've got problems. That's why I like on Halloween, people burn houses, Devil's Night stuff in Detroit. But what they're doing is Detroit is taking a look at it. You're going to read an article in Classroom on the assignment part of this on Thursday, or you could take a look at here's the problem, but what do? You have to figure out how to revitalize your neighborhoods. You've got to figure out a way to address this problem. And you're going to read an article about not only the abandoned houses in Michigan, but what some people are trying to do to bring it around and back. Okay, some more pictures of Detroit. You've got a neighborhood up on the left. Look at that. If you've got one house that's being lived in and you've got like 6 other that are empty, you've got a problem. Nobody wants to move in that neighborhood. You're going to have crime. If you look down below it, you're going to see factories and stuff like that. And with these factories, you're going to see lack of business, lack of jobs, and no one's developing that. And then once you've got that problem, then what happens next? Okay. Next, East St. Louis and St. Louis. I lived in St. Louis. Love the Cardinals, love the Blues, always have. You know what I'm saying? But living in St. Louis is kind of different. A lot of people say, I'm from St. Louis, but they don't really live in St. Louis. St. Louis itself is kind of a weird city. They set the limits. And then all the suburbs is where everything grew out too. And, if you look on the map, it's kind of hard to see, but, you got Ferguson, Florissant, Maplewood, Hazelwood, all those places over there. And that's where the people really live. Well, by the 1960s, the city fathers of St. Louis realized we got to do something. So they built an arch. If you've ever been to downtown St. Louis, it's fun. The arch is a great area. Right next to it's Laclede Landing. That's like their old market. You got to go down there. It's a lot of fun. They've got the ballpark down there. There's things that you go downtown St. Louis and do. Cross Rivers, East St. Louis. They didn't do anything like that. And by the 1970s and 80s, when I lived there, East St. Louis was really depressed. East St. Louis had a lot of problems. And so they have to figure out ways of getting people back down there and address your problem. You cannot let your city go, or you're going to end up with this. Now, I throw Detroit out there, and people from Detroit are going to yell because they go, hey, not all Detroit's ruins. And they're right. Look at the picture down here on the very right corner. You see the big buildings. But Detroit is shifting. The factories, remember we talked economic unit? The suppliers are from all over the place, just-in-time delivery. And factories are going to move to Indiana, Ohio, down south. And so a lot of those jobs have shifted. The problem is you've got to figure out how to take care of this area and this problem, because if you don't address it, it'll hit you bad. Now let's take a look at Omaha. And this brings in one of the historical problems of this flight and blight problem. First one is redlining. Redlining is, if you look at the picture there, it was a bad thing. What redlining was back in the 30s, the government set up ways of helping people with housing and stuff like that. As a result, part of the New Deal. But one of the things was they decided not to loan in certain parts of town. And you'd basically take a map like this map of North Omaha and just draw a red line saying, this area right here is where we're not going to loan money to people to buy houses. Well, it has racial undertones. It's really unfair. But that happened, and so in this redlining district, it was really hard for people of African American uh, community up in North Omaha to get loans to buy property there, which affects the values. That's why if you go up on 24th, North 24th and Lake, there's a very important building. It's the Carver Savings and Loan. It's an effort, a community effort to start a savings loan up so you can help people in the neighborhood get loans to buy where the banks aren't going to loan you the money to do it. Okay, redlining can happen in a lot of ways in a lot of cities. In other cities, these red line areas become really run down, and pretty soon it's like a self fulfilling prophecy. We're not going to loan money in this because we think it's going to turn bad, and then we draw the red line, and people can't borrow the money to buy the houses and the property, blah 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 blah. Before you know it, it turns bad. That's a self fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to throw the term blockbusting, and that doesn't really happen as much in Omaha as some other cities. But blockbusting in the 60s and 70s and 80s is kind of like as neighborhoods were changing, there were unscrupulous realtors that would come in, and they would incite this. Oh my God, the neighborhood's changing. Oh, look what's happening here. Oh, blah, 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 and get people to try to list their houses and move out to the suburbs, and then they could take those houses if they listed them at a lower value, then they could turn around and flip them. Okay, blockbusting in the end also accelerates problems in the neighborhoods and blight. Okay, so redlining, yeah, we had in Omaha. Take a look at the map over there. We really did. There's much more I could talk to you about it, but it's not Omaha history. But redlining is a problem, and today, I mean, that would be somewhere where you could go, hey, redlining is not so much by law, but all too often by practice. Instead of de jure, it's going to be de facto, which just means it's just by practice. And cities have to address that. And if you want to go down to that same area, if you're looking over there today, drive down 24th Street today. It's changing. And 24th between Cummings Street and, say, Lake Street, there's some new neighborhoods in there. There's opportunity. If you got visions and people that have a hope and got a plan, you can change some of this around, but you got to really work at it. Take a look at this map. I think it's interesting. They used the 2000 census, and if you look at the dots, every dot on this map is where a child listed living in a household below the poverty line. Now, this map is really, really obvious. It puts things in place. Okay. Now, if you look at North Omaha, you're going to see a lot of the red dots there, and a lot of those problems we talked about, the redlining, the blockbusting, the white flight, changed North Omaha. I went to school along Ames Avenue, and Ames Avenue has changed so much since I was a kid. Look at the blue, which is the Hispanic dots, and you're going to see a lot of South Omaha there too. The red right down there in South Omaha on the Douglas-Sarpy County line, that's going to be, we'd have some projects down in that part of Omaha yet still, Hilltop and stuff like that. But if you look at the other things, there's going to be some clusters. Right above Papillion, can you see that cluster right there? And right where you see L Street in Omaha, there's a cluster over there. A lot of that involves different types of housing, what apartments and stuff are there, Section 8 housing and stuff like that. But what this does is it kind of condenses a lot of these dots. The problem is, if you've got this, you as a city need to address it to bring quality of life up for everybody, economic development up for everybody. Everybody lives in the city. But you've got to look at stuff like this, because this does not mean your life is worse. It just means your life might be harder to get the loans and stuff that you need to change things around. And there's a lot of reasons for every one of these dots. Another way of kind of looking at it, if you look at this map, people that don't have cars are more likely going to use public transportation. Look at the same thing you see in Central Omaha, North Omaha, Central Omaha, South Omaha. Ridership on buses is a lot higher. But if you notice, there are other areas out further where it can be an issue. That's why Omaha is trying to come up with the rapid transit bus system. You read the article about that too. Okay, so in the end, what do we learn? I mean, when you start talking about city problems, what can we learn? If you're not careful, if you have problems that drive people out of your city, you're decentralizing problems that can be really impressive, that is a danger for a city. You've got to counteract that. And so a lot of cities have looked at bringing people back downtown, and that's what we're going to talk about with Friday. Gentrification and commercialization. Things like, again, the old market, things of getting people back downtown, the plaza in Kansas City, okay? Why? Because if you don't, you're going to leave all of your money, your tax base and everything is going to rush out to the suburbs, and that's where the growth is, and you're going to have uneven, unsustainable growth. And you have to, as a city, address the quality of life of everybody in your city. If you're a city that has a massive problem like Detroit, your solutions have got to be bigger because your problem is bigger. You cannot ignore a problem and just let it sit. It'll stay. Okay. Omaha, Nebraska, we've been working on that. And Friday, we're going to look at how we're developing and where we're developing. And next week, we'll take a look at a lot of these developments, Midtown Crossing and stuff like that. On Classroom, take a look tomorrow. I want you on Classroom to take a look at the articles that I posted about, not only Detroit and what's happening there and what they're doing about it, but also in Omaha, some areas like that and development there. Have a good afternoon. Miss you, kids. Take it easy. Bye-bye.